to bring this pain and this suffering upon me. Now, I've been talking about the new faith, would you believe it, for more than 30 years. And so I pulled out of my shelves a book I wrote back in 1979. So that means the writings of it took place before 1979. And right at the very first chapter in this book, the very first chapter is headed, Rational Living Requires a Rational Religion. And I've spoken about these things and written about them over the years. So it was probably a surprise to some of you when some of your friends, who obviously you haven't brought to St. Michael's, would say to you, what's this fellow on about? Indeed, some people within the church structures rushed onto the web to assure people that the church still upheld the creeds and the doctrines. They didn't want other faiths to be upset. They probably forgot that Jesus had something to say about the religious structures of his day. He said it is easy to uphold the external fabrics of your beliefs and your doctrines, but don't forget the softer inner things where real renewal might yet take place. We need a renewal, you see, within the Christian structures. Of course, I acknowledge that the creeds and the doctrines are historic realities. But we're living now in the first decade of the 21st century. And people in the wider world don't know how to cope with the terrible pain of depression, where vitality and hope and joy have been drained inexorably away. People out there they say they're atheists and agnostics in their millions, have worries that overwhelm them. And people say to me, I'm a worrier, and my mother was a worrier, my father was a worrier too, and he drank himself to his death. The old faith was not there for them. We want the new faith to be there for them. So that the new faith embraces modern medicine, contemporary psychology, and a searching humanitarianism. How to live life in all its fullness. The second pain I'd like to put before you is the pain of dying. Some people die in their sleep, and we say, what a beautiful way to go, because we all fear a painful, undignified death. The American surgeon Sherwin Nuland, I've quoted from his book before, called How We Die, said, I have not often seen much dignity in the process by which we die. And how many people said to him, as he reported in his book, my mother died in agony. Another said there was no dignity in my mother's death. So I found myself joining that train, because when I was still in my teens, I heard my own mother in agony, pleading for someone to help her die comfortably. Such was her unrelieved pain. Many of you will rush to inform me that today things are different. Yes, they are. They are, for some people. But in my 2 jobs that I have been alongside many in their last hours and last days, and some have been mercifully sedated and helped to die. Others have been in unrelieved, shocking, indescribable pain, while their relatives looked on also in anguish. We have no hesitation in recognizing a person's courage in coping with their pain, but there's something surely inhumane in believing that their pain is necessary, acceptable. We know that there are complex issues to be settled in approving voluntary euthanasia and a person's right to choose their own way of dying. But when more than 80% of the population surveyed favour that choice, it is hardly applaudable that our governments refuse to find a way to respect human rights and human dignity. The new faith recognises that that many of these issues need exploration and searching. The old faith of the Bible knew nothing of many of these issues that we take today for granted. Jesus lived at a time when life expectancy was very short. Now we live expecting our life to be at least 75, and soon it will be 105. And there are many moral and social and medical and legal and theological concerns to be looked at. Jesus lived at a time that if you recovered from a health crisis, it was a miracle. Today we look for a brain surgeon. We look for a good heart surgeon. We look for appropriate medication. We look for incisive psychological treatment. It is still often a miracle. I tell you, it is still often a miracle. But it is a different worldview from the one back there. A new moral compass is now needed. A new faith, the new faith wants to draw people into search for a moral compass that will be suitable for our time. So that's number two. Number three, the pain of not being good enough. Our family ethos, our education systems often tip children into a world that confirms that they're not good enough. And they live their whole life believing that. Right across the lifespan, from infancy to really old, there are millions of people living with low self-worth. And I tell you, it's a very painful way to live. Sometimes they hide it. It's a secret pain. But it's often a stored pain. If Jesus said, love yourself, and he did, these people have never learned how. And nor have they been encouraged to find the way. Instead, they've been subjected to experiences from earliest childhood right through, and they never had a chance. Others have run into terrible traumas along the way. It damaged their psyche. It was equivalent to soul murder. It drained their confidence. It left them struggling to know who and what they would be or could be in the traumatic aftermath. And in that drawn-out experience, they became burdened by guilt. One of the huge burdens even today. Guilt that is inaccessible to any well-meaning reassurance or any religious absolution or answer. It becomes a stored and troublesome pain. And we need to take it more seriously because it affects countless millions in their mental health, in their relationships, in the whole of their future living. The new faith stands for searching for pathways for that human transformation. To get to that transformation, it needs to join hands with a contemporary psychological release process, and it needs to be fully supported by a tolerant, I emphasize the word, by a tolerant, thoughtful, therapeutic, theological circle of people who are inclusive, inspirational, and accepting. At the heart of the new faith are those words given to us by Paul Tillich, the theologian, some 60 years ago. Do you remember the words? We've learnt them here in St. Michael's year in and year out. He said, you are accepted in spite of everything. Put aside, he said, all your creeds and all your dogma, all your pre-packed, hermetically sealed beliefs. Simply accept the fact that you are accepted.